Hi, let's practice for AP Calculus together. Question 1 says, what is a reasonable estimate for limit of f in x when x approaches 4? We look at our graph, and when we get closer to 4, from the left, the y gets closer to 3. And when we approach to 4 from the right, the y value gets closer to 6. As 3 and 6 are different values, we conclude that in this case the limit does not exist. Question 2 says, what is a reasonable estimate for limit of g in x as x approaches to negative 8? As x approaches to negative 8 from the left, we notice that the value of g in x approaches to 0. And as the value of x approaches to negative 8 from the right, the value of g in x also approaches 0. Based on this, we can conclude that 0 is a good estimate. Question 3 says, what is a reasonable estimate for limit of h in x as x approaches 0? If we approach 0 from the left, we notice that the value of y gets closer to 2. And as we approach 0 from the right, we notice also that the value of y gets closer to 2. Based on this, we have the same limit from the left and from the right, we can conclude that a reasonable estimate is 2. Question 4. What is a reasonable estimate for limit of g in x as x tends to negative 4? If we approach negative 4 from the left, the y value is negative 3. And as we approach negative 4 from the right, the value of the y gets closer to 2. As we have different limits from the left and from the right, we conclude that the limit does not exist. Question 5. Which limit expressions agree with the graph? Limit of f in x as x approaches to negative 4 is unbounded. When we look at negative 4 from the left and from the right, the value of the y gets closer to negative infinity. For that reason, we can conclude that the limit of f in x is unbounded. Based on that, this will not be correct. Let's take a look at C. Limit of f in x when x approaches to 4 from the left is equal to 3. When we look at our graph at the value of 4 and we look at that value from the left, we notice that the value of y gets closer to 3. So that is correct. So the answers for this question will be A and C. Question 6. What is a reasonable estimate for limit of g in x as x approaches to 5? As x approaches to 5, from this direction, we notice that the value of the g in x approaches to 3.68. And as the value of x approaches to 5 in this direction, we also notice that the value of the y approaches to 3.68. As we have the same limit from the right and from the left, we can conclude that a reasonable estimate is 3.68. Question 7. What is a reasonable estimate for limit of f in x as x approaches to a from the left? When we look at our table and we approach to the values of x from the left, which is this part in here, we notice that the values of f in x are increasing to a higher rate instead of approaching to a specific value. When that happens, we can conclude that our limit is unbounded. Question 8. What is a reasonable estimate for limit of g in x as x approaches to negative 2? As x increases to approach to negative 2, the value of g in x gets closer to 8. And as the values of x decrease, we also notice that the values of g in x are getting closer to 8. For that reason, we can conclude that a reasonable estimate for this limit is 8. Question 9. Given the function f and asked to estimate limit of f in x as x approaches to negative 7, 3 students created tables. Each table is accurate, but which one is the best for approximating the limit? As we are asked for the limit of f in x as x approaches to negative 7, we need to select the table in which we are getting more closer to negative 7 from both sides, from the left and from the right. In this case, the best answer choice will be B, because it's the one in which the values of the x are getting closer and closer to negative 7 from the right and from the left. Question 10. Consider graphs A, B, and C. Which graphs agree with this statement? Limit of g in x as x approaches to 1 from the right equals 0. When we look at our first graph and we approach to 1 from the right, we get 1 as a value of y. For graphs B, when we approach to 1 from the right, we get 0. And finally, for graph C, when we approach to 1 from the right, we get -1. So in this case, our only option is B. Thank you so much for watching. If you need tutoring for any grade level, subject, or test prep, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you. Have a great day.